Tonight, we begin with a revelation that Pentagon officials had feared, NATO commanders had tracked, and intelligence analysts had prepared for. A decision that unfolded not over months of deliberation, but in a single day. A single day that changed the battlefield calculus. A single day that forced Russia's hand. A single day that triggered what military experts are now calling Moscow's most desperate retreat since the failed siege of Kyiv. What the Kremlin did this week crossed a line that Washington had hoped would hold. And when that line broke, Ukraine did not hesitate. They responded with precision, with overwhelming force, and with a message that echoed across the front lines. For weeks now, there had been signals, not official statements, not diplomatic cables, just signals that Russia was preparing something unprecedented. The Kremlin has been aggressive, yes, but they have been calculated in their aggression. Their moves have followed a certain rhythm, a pattern, almost a predictability. But what set off alarm bells in Washington this week was that the pattern went silent. Intelligence officers who monitor Russian military movements know the indicators. The troop rotations, the ammunition stockpiles, the encrypted communications, the sudden repositioning of strategic assets, all of that went quiet. And whenever Russia goes quiet, it means something is about to get loud. Early Tuesday morning, Pentagon surveillance systems detected what they described as significant Russian military repositioning, including missile systems that had not been moved in over 18 months. These are the kinds of assets that Moscow only deploys when they are signaling something very specific: escalation, intimidation, or imminent offensive action. Analysts didn't know which category this fell into or whether it fell into all three at once. But what they did know was that Russia was changing its military posture, and when a nuclear power shifts posture without explanation, even by small measures, Washington pays attention. The revelation issued by the Pentagon today was not normal. It was not routine. It was not symbolic. It was urgent. Officials, after classified briefings, described Russia's move as provocative, destabilizing, and perhaps most importantly, directly threatening to NATO's security architecture. But provocation only works if the target hesitates. Ukraine did not. In fact, their response today was among the most decisive we've seen in this entire conflict. Here's what we know. Within hours of Trump's missile deal being confirmed, Ukraine launched coordinated strikes. These weren't the standard drone operations. These were precision, long-range attacks, weapons systems that Ukraine only deploys when they are preparing to reshape the battlefield entirely. Tonight, defense officials confirmed that Ukraine launched devastating strikes on Russian logistics hubs, including a command center that had recently been reinforced for what analysts believe was a planned spring offensive. Ukraine struck before Russia could execute. They hit ammunition depots. They hit fuel storage facilities. They hit communication nodes that were likely coordinating the next wave of attacks. In other words, Ukraine targeted the nervous system of Russia's eastern campaign. The infrastructure that would have made their offensive operational. This is what made the Pentagon's revelation so urgent. Russia's repositioning wasn't just symbolic, it was actionable. It represented the kind of threat that could devastate Ukrainian defenses if left unchecked. And Ukraine, understanding that fully, responded with force. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but strategically. They didn't target civilian areas. They didn't overextend their resources. They hit military infrastructure. They hit command structures. And here's where the story becomes even more significant. Intelligence sources now believe that Russia's latest positioning was designed to test the resolve of Western support after months of political uncertainty. Moscow wanted to see whether Washington would waver, but instead, the opposite happened. The Pentagon didn't hesitate. Trump's administration authorized a missile package so comprehensive, so immediate, that even the Kremlin noticed. You don't get Moscow's attention easily. But today, Washington did. Defense analysts, speaking under anonymity, described Russia's subsequent retreat as tactical repositioning, a way to avoid catastrophic losses. But Ukraine proved today that they remain both capable and willing. Their strikes were not only effective, they were timed so precisely that Russian forces had no opportunity to relocate assets. As reports continued coming in throughout the evening, we learned more about the scale of Ukraine's response. Ukrainian Air Force carried out over 40 sorties, forcing Russian air defenses into overdrive. Ground forces targeted forward operating bases that had been established in the last 72 hours. Special operations units operating behind enemy lines reportedly disabled radar installations used by Russia to coordinate missile strikes. This wasn't just a counterattack. This wasn't just a response. This was strategic dominance. This was battlefield control. And battlefield control is the one thing Russia has struggled to maintain since the war began. Remember, Russia thought this war would last weeks. They thought Ukraine would surrender. They thought the West would lose interest. But tonight, the exact opposite is happening. Ukraine is fighting harder than ever. Western support is accelerating, and Russia is retreating. What makes this moment so critical and so dangerous is that Putin's latest move happened at a time when he is under extraordinary internal pressure. Military hardliners want escalation. Economic advisors want negotiation. Regional commanders want more resources. The Russian public wants answers. Putin is balancing these demands while losing ground on the battlefield. And when leaders in that position make sudden moves, they're not doing it from strength. They're doing it from pressure. They're doing it from vulnerability. As the week continues, we expect more details to emerge about what exactly Russia hoped to achieve. But what we do know is that the Pentagon's revelation was timely. It exposed Russia's intentions. It enabled Ukraine's response, and it demonstrated Western resolve. What happens next will depend on what Russia does in the coming days. If they escalate further, this moment will be remembered as a turning point. If they retreat, Ukraine and Washington have already shown they are ready. And tonight, for the first time in months, the Kremlin appears to be recalculating. Moscow is quiet, too quiet. And when Russia is quiet, it means they are planning. It means they are choosing their next move carefully. Because tonight, Russia learned something they have learned many times before. Ukraine will not break. The West will not abandon them. And every escalation will be met with overwhelming response. This story is far from over. But tonight, one thing is clear. The Pentagon's revelation changed everything. Trump's missile deal shifted the balance, and Russia's desperate retreat has begun. And we will be here watching every detail as the next phase unfolds.